The G7, of course, welcome all of you, and it's a pleasure for me as your Canadian Foreign Minister to be hosting and welcoming all G7 foreign ministers in the beautiful country of Canada. I can say that through our long conversations, we were able to find strong G7 unity on a variety of issues that were discussed, and one that I would like to highlight in particular is the one linked to Ukraine. All G7 foreign ministers agree with the U.S. proposal of a ceasefire that is supported by Ukrainians, and we are now studying and looking at the Russian reaction. So ultimately, the ball is now in Russia's court. Of course, new Prime Minister, a new dynamic, and I look forward to being able to support Prime Minister Carney and his work on Canada-US. What I can say is I've already mentioned to Secretary Rubio that it was important to be able to organize a call between the President and the Prime Minister, and I know that we're working to do that in the next couple of days.
Good morning, Madame Joly. If on your meeting with Marco Rubio,
yeah.
Can you provide us with any information about how that meeting went? What was discussed, and did you receive any indication that Canada could get concessions at any point on tariffs?
Okay, so a couple of things. We had a very long conversation, the Secretary and I wanted to be able to have a frank conversation with him. Of course, Canada's sovereignty is not up for debate, and we had a long conversation on tariffs and trade. The approach when it comes to a relationship with the U.S., and through my conversation with the Secretary, was we will put maximum pressure on the Americans. And meanwhile, we'll work on finding off-ramps. Because we know ultimately at the end of the day, the Trump tariffs are going to hurt Americans. And so that's our message, and that's our approach. And meanwhile, I think that on many different issues, what Secretary Rubio and I have been able to agree on was we won't let things that we don't agree on stop us to agree on other things. And that was the essence also of the meeting that was happening here. We know that we're living in a dangerous world. We know that there are so many different issues we need to solve, particularly the issue linked to Ukraine, the Middle East, the rise of China, etc. So that's why I think we were able to actually cover many different issues, but at least be able to say that we will be keeping our relationship and make sure that we continue to talk. Well, you know, what I said to the Secretary is Canada's sovereignty is not up to debate, period. There's no argument, there's no conversation about it, there's no need to talk about it. You're here, you respect us, you respect our sovereignty, you're in our country, you respect our people, period.
Hi, Minister Joly, Taria, Israel Global News. Despite your meeting with Rubio and also the meeting of your colleagues in Washington, we haven't seen those off-ramps materialize. We haven't seen a pause in tariffs. So what do you say to Canadians who are afraid they'll lose their jobs or businesses will go under, that we haven't really seen much movement?
Well, we're waiting.
Well, I'm sorry, but I don't agree, because there's been a pause on tariffs linked to goods that are registered under CUSMA. So that's been the case. But I get your point that Canadians are anxious. And there is a real fear of people across the country of losing their jobs and their families of being able to have access to decent livelihoods. And so that's why I feel the urgency, and the team feels the urgency of making sure that we are putting maximum pressure on the American administration, the Trump administration, while conveying to the American people, who are the only ones that can ultimately really have President Trump change course, to say to them, well, this is bad for you too. And to all the American friends here today, my message is clear. Trump tariffs are bad for American people. They're bad because ultimately they cost more for them at the pump, at the grocery store, when they want to build a new home, so construction, etc. And this will drive inflation, and this can hurt many American people's jobs. So there are no winners in trade wars. And not only are we seeing now that the Trump administration is engaging in a trade war against Canada, but it is doing so also against Europeans. And it is doing so against many other trading partners. So what we know as of now is that April 2nd is an important date, because under the executive order that President Trump signed on January 20th, there was a question of reciprocal tariffs that could start April 2nd. And so it's not only Canada watching and engaging on this issue, but many other of my colleagues here are also working on this issue. So I've been also working with Europeans to exchange information, as also the European Union imposed counter tariffs against American products in Europe following the tariffs on steel and aluminum. Yeah, I think many of my colleagues coming here thought that this issue was still a joke, and that, you know, this had to be taken in a humorous way. But I've said to them, this is not a joke. Canadians are anxious. Canadians are proud people, and you are here in a sovereign country, and so therefore, you know, we don't expect this to be even discussed or clearly not laughed at. And so I think you should ask them that question today.
Mark Carney is expected to make his first official trip to Europe next
Yeah.
week. What message do you think that sends, that he'll be heading there on his first official trip? And what does coordinating with European countries look like in the face of both U.S. tariffs and U.S. aggression towards Canada?
Mm-hmm. Listen, I won't speculate on what will be the agenda of the Prime Minister designate. Today's a big day. It's the swearing-in ceremony, so it's his day. But what I can say to you when it comes to Europe and what I'm doing here with my colleagues is Canada wants to foster new partnerships in the world. We want to be closer to Europe.
Oh, no. No.
We want to be closer to Britain, to the UK, as we've been having, of course, the just our historic ties and the same head of state. But ultimately, we know that when it comes to the threats of coming out of the White House regarding tariffs, that we need to diversify our economy. So that's one thing. But meanwhile, there are lots of opportunities in Canada to be able to work amongst each other, to be able to be closer from one province to another.
You're right.
And a lot of our trade has been north-south for a long, long time, but that was not always the case. If you look at our history and why Canada was created, at the time, we created a country because also we didn't want to be part of the United States, but more than that, to make sure ultimately that we would be closer from east to west. And we built the railway, we built infrastructure. So that's what we need to do now. We need to get rid of internal commercial barriers between provinces. We need to make sure that we build more infrastructure, better infrastructure, that we invest in our military. Basically, I could go on and on and on.
Finally!
But there are many things we can do within our country to offset the impacts, the negative impacts of American tariffs against us.
Hey, Minister. Nick Taylor-Gazy from Politico. You're heading back to Ottawa, so you've got...
You're saying I'm heading back?
Yeah,
to
I imagine. After that...
Is that a question? Not hypothesis?
Man, do I sound like an idiot.
When it comes to direct interactions with American counterparts, have you thought beyond that and what the next steps are?
So, sorry, what's your question? You're saying I'm going back to Ottawa and then I talk to American counterparts? But
I'm saying after that.
Oh, after that. Well, listen, right now, what time is it, guys? 8:46. At 8:46, I'm the Foreign Minister of Canada, and I can only talk about the present.
What the hell are you talking about?
Hi, Minister. Brian Platt with Bloomberg. You said earlier that you believe you're on track for a strong statement, strong communique. How would you describe the conversations at this meeting on Israel and Palestine, and how much ground have you and others had to give to the U.S. position on this?
I think that when it comes to different issues, Ukraine, the Middle East, we've had sessions talking about these different issues, subjects, and the goal was to keep strong G7 unity. And we all know that when it comes to the Israel-Gaza issue and the Middle East in general, ultimately we need to make sure that the first phase of the ceasefire holds, and then we get to stage 2, and that holds too. Canada's position is clear. We believe in a two-state solution, period. And I think that you'll see in the statement that ultimately Israelis and Palestinians can only live side by side if we respect their right to self-determination. And I think that there is strong support for that approach.
Last question to CBC.
Kate McKenna, CBC. Good morning, Minister. I'm wondering, did you ask our allies to speak out against Donald Trump's annexation threat? And yesterday we saw 2 foreign ministry representatives wearing red and white. I'm wondering how did that come to be?
Well, I thought they were it was a great fashion statement. As a woman, I was really happy to see that they were, wearing red and white. And I have really good relationships with my colleagues, my German colleague Annalena Baerbock, who's a dear friend, and also with Kaja Kallas, who's a dear friend too, who's the High Representative for the European Union. I think I've answered a bit that question already, because the reaction of my colleagues coming from Europe was really about this absurd threat of annexation. Was really is that a joke, Melanie? Is that my team is telling me that I should not comment on that because it's a joke. And I was saying, no, it's not a joke. It's not. This is a very serious threat. And you don't mess up with a country's sovereignty. We know that. We've seen that elsewhere in the world. Well, you just don't mess up with our sovereignty. And so you should ask that question to all of them today. We'll see how they answer. I'm quite positive that it will be in the interest of Canadians.